together. You may also request a goodwill adjustment by explaining your previous good history and asking for forgiveness for the time you were unable to pay.
Visit this Town Square Media radio station's website for more tips and advice from GMFS.
Are you ready to look for your dream home? Then call GMFS Mortgage right now and get pre-qualified before you do anything else. GMFS Mortgage is the largest Louisiana-operated residential mortgage lender, and we've been the local mortgage experts in South Louisiana since 1999. Call our Lafayette branch now, 337-326-4671. That's 326-4671 for GMFS Mortgage.
GMFS, changing lives.
Equal Housing Lender, NMLS number 64997, licensed in 23 states. Offer available in all licensed states.
Acadiana's best sports leader.
Oh, man, I love it. I love it.
ESPN 1420, KPEL, Lafayette.
ESPN Radio Sports Center.
I'm Christine Lisi. Breaking news. The deal is done. Quarterback Drew Brees and the Saints finally agreed to a contract extension. Will be announced as a 5-year deal, but contains an automatic void to 2 years, reports ESPN's Ed Werder, which means Brees is contractually committed to the Saints only for this season and next season. The $20 million salary this year and $24.25 million next year, fully guaranteed. Vikings coach Mike Zimmer says he still hasn't decided if his starting quarterback will be Sean Hill or Sam Bradford for Sunday's regular season opener against the Titans. Added he won't announce the starter before the game. Two are splitting snaps this week. Tennessee coach Mike Mularkey expects that Bradford will start. Chargers defensive end Joey Bosa didn't participate in practice today, limited by what the team characterized as tightness. Third overall pick in the draft, probably won't play on Sunday. After a stint on the DL with right elbow soreness, Nationals righty Steven Strasburg returns, starts tonight against the Braves. Tiger Woods hoping to return from multiple back surgeries and play in his first tournament in more than a year next month in Napa, California.
Sports Center on ESPN Radio is brought to you by Barbasol. America, you're looking good. You're shaving with Close, comfortable Barbasol shaving cream. Close Shave America, Close Shave Barbasol.
It's now time for the Dean of Sports in Acadiana, Jay Walker and Bird's Eye View on Sports Radio ESPN 1420.
Well, everybody's heard about the bird. Bird, bird, bird. The bird's a winner when a bird, bird, bird. Bird is a winner when a bird, bird, bird. When a bird is a winner when a bird, bird, bird. The bird's a winner when a bird, bird, bird. When a bird is a winner when a bird, bird. The bird's a winner when a bird, bird, bird. The bird's a winner when a bird, bird, bird. When a bird is a winner when a bird, bird. The bird's a winner when a don't you know about the bird when everybody knows that the bird is a winner when a bird, bird. The bird's a winner when a
ESPN 1420, ESPN1420.com. We welcome you into Bird's Eye View. I'm Jay Walker. Today is Wednesday already. Middle of the week is here. It's what happens when you get Monday off. And so here we are. You know, we're, what, a little more than 72 hours away from another football game. I mean, it's like, won't be long now. We promised you that the director of intercollegiate athletics at the University of Louisiana, Scott Farmer, would join us today. And guess what? He's here. You know, I asked you last month if we could kind of make this a monthly deal, and you said absolutely. And so glad to see we're able to work something out, and hopefully it'll continue. But I appreciate you coming by.
Oh, Jay, I always like being on the show, and you're right. We just got to get it on each other's calendars because mine sure fills up in a hurry.
Yeah, mine doesn't fill up quite as much as yours does. Not this time of the year, but once we start traveling for basketball and baseball, and yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yep.
I want to start today just talking about this past week. I don't know about you, and I've said this many, many times. For me, the most stressful week is the week before the first football game. And I'm sure in your department it is that way too, because you've got so many things that you've got to take into consideration when you put on a show. And basically that's what it is every week. You put on a show. And then, of course, on Monday, or maybe Tuesday, because I don't know what your situation was Monday, but then you have a staff meeting. You say, okay, what worked? What didn't work? What was good? What wasn't good? I'm sure you've done that by now. let's talk about, first of all, some things that happened that went off pretty smoothly.
Well, let's back up a little further. You're right. Last couple of weeks has been kind of hectic around the athletic department. Our annual fund donations had been down, going into August and going into mid-August really, and down about 15%, actually 13 to 15%. And it's like everybody waited till the last minute. And the good news is they came in those last 2 weeks and because they needed their parking passes or they were getting their season tickets and realized they hadn't got their parking passes, all that stuff. So it was just a buzz around the office, 10, 12 people literally every time I would go downstairs. So people coming in to pay, and that was one thing. That was a good positive buzz. The other thing was, ticket sales are still down a little bit, but we had a lot of people buying. They were way down, and now they're down, about 18%. Which, again, is down, don't get me wrong, but we had a lot of people in the last couple of weeks buy. We did seem to have, as a department this year, we had some issues getting parking passes in the right envelopes and getting them out in a timely fashion, something that the ticket office and the RCA office and my people will all get together and try to figure out and iron out so we don't have those issues again. That just seemed to be difficult last week, and I don't know if it's because we opened at home. We've been on the road quite a bit the last few years, and this time it just kind of snuck up on us and snuck up after the flooding and just a lot of things happened. So that was kind of last week. And then you're right, we all came in on Monday and everyone does even though it was a day off, everyone kind of did their report, and Tuesday morning staff meeting we went through everything, and there were a lot of things that were right, and there were some things that we got to get better on. And one of the things that we probably should talk about is how did we play at 11 o'clock? Where did that come from?
I'm getting to that.
Okay.
I'll get to that. I'll get to that in a minute.
We'll hold that then.
Okay, you're minus 13% in the RCAF now. How close is that to becoming?
I appreciate you saying
flat?
that. I meant to say that we're down to about 4% now.
So you're 4% behind where you were last year.
This date last year, exactly.
Okay.
So we closed that gap significantly in the last 2 weeks.
Season tickets, you said you're down 15%. Is that about 1,800 tickets?
Yeah, in that ballpark, almost 2,000. Yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to get some real numbers there.
And we knew we were going to be down some. We budgeted to be down. But, yeah, we still need people, if they can, to do their best to get out and watch us play.
Okay. 11 o'clock. You and I talked about this last month when you were here as to how the American Sports Network and their decision to get involved with the Sun Belt Conference, how that affects business as we know it, I guess, when it comes to, for so long, unless ESPN was jumping in and saying, okay, guys, we need you to play on a Wednesday night. We're going to put you on national television. Except for that, you've been free to set your time for kickoffs for a while now.
No, you're absolutely right. And so let's kind of set the landscape. Across the country, all conferences, the television controls kickoff times. That's just what they do. If it's ESPN has our rights also, and they have, till I think the end of January to pick those Tuesday or Wednesday night games that they want or Thursday night games. And they do that, and then we kind of set the schedule around it. But they actually have the rights to all the games after the first 3 weeks. They just have to let us know 12 days in advance what time the game would be. So you're like, holy cow, you mean we don't set game times till 12 days out? That's exactly right. And so when you go to websites, if you can get on websites now and just look, a lot of schools just put TBA.
Yeah.
Because they don't know until 2 Mondays before the contest.
Drives our sales department nuts.
It is. It's hard. It's very hard. And I got to admit, television will do their best to stay away from a special game like a homecoming or something. They really do that. But, 11 o'clock just happens to be when they told us we were playing. That's when Mississippi State played last week at home, and that's when Georgia's playing this week at home. It happens all over the place. I wish it didn't happen in the Deep South. I really do. I wish they would let all the Deep South teams play late at night or, after it cools off a little bit and let the teams up north play at 11. But for some reason, they don't always see it the way I see it.
All right. you've got your primary rights owned by ESPN. Your secondary rights are also owned by ESPN, but actually ESPN3.
Correct. That's right.
And then you've got your third tier, which is kind of open.
Right.
If the game's on ESPN3, because it's a stream, they really don't get involved a whole much on your kickoffs.
Not at all. That's exactly right.
So when this became an issue, since you only get two Thursday nights and 2 weeknights as far as the ESPN proper is concerned, and that's settled a long time ago,
last January.
So now this whole thing becomes different because American Sports Network has gotten involved. And basically, correct me if I'm wrong, what they've done is they've gone to ESPN3 and said, look, we want to take these games and put them on terrestrial television. We'll handle the production costs. We'll handle the talent. We'll handle all of this. But by doing that, and because it's on terrestrial TV, now it kind of bumps up to where they can say, okay, here's where you guys are going to play. Now, they wanted you to play that game at 2:30.
They did want us to play at 2:30. They absolutely wanted us to play at 2:30.
And you managed to negotiate it till 11 o'clock.
At the final hour, really, we got it, I'd say the lesser of two evils. It wasn't good. We still wanted it at 6. But what happened really with, going back to your point, ESPN subleased with the American Sport Network. So it wasn't even a contract that the Sun Belt had with the American Sport Network. Sun Belt was out of it just like UL was out of it. It was a sublease by ESPN. So the conference really didn't have a whole lot to say either. It's kind of a crazy situation.
Okay. Have you ever seen the contract between the Sun Belt and ESPN?
Have you ever seen it? Yes, I have seen it. I haven't studied every word of it.
Do you know, was there a little fine print thing that said, oh, by the way, we have the right to sublease this?
I can't answer that.
I'd be interested. Yeah. And I realize Carl Benson's probably the guy to ask, even though, I'm sure he's the guy. But, if I'm sitting here and I think I've got an agreement with ESPN and ESPN3, and then all of a sudden these folks come in that I've had nothing to do with and say, hey, we're going to do this, I might have a question or two.
Oh, I agree 100%. And quite honestly, we had a chance to ask Carl some of those questions this morning on a conference call, and he's going to get us some of those answers. Because the way I look at it, Jay, is American Sport Network, I don't even think was established when we signed that contract.
Correct.
But neither was ESPN3 when we signed the contract, and it affected some of our games. About 4 years ago, maybe Hudspeth's first year or second year, there was a Arkansas State game in there that got moved because of ESPN3, and we're like, oh, how did you do that? Well, it was covered in the contract somewhere. So, but we did ask Carl some of those questions because I think this has got some ramifications moving forward. Again, it's not like ESPN's picking this up. This is a sport network that would want to do a lot of the UL games and a lot of the Sun Belt games. And for them just to come in September and say, we're going to play at 2:30, I have a problem. I struggle with that. And obviously our fans struggle with that. We don't want anyone out there at that time of day. It was dangerous out there this past week.
Moving forward, I know that that ASN had come in and said they also want to do the South Alabama game. They want to do that at 2:32, but it was past the deadline that they could identify the game, so you had the right to say, no. And
only because they missed the deadline, though. You're absolutely right.
Had they not missed the deadline, you'd be playing at 2:30 next week also.
That's exactly right.
Let me ask you this question. Has the American Sports Network identified all of the games that they are planning to do this season?
I don't believe they have gone through the entire season yet. No, they have talked to me about one other game of ours in particular really late in the year, but nothing is wrapped up yet.
Guess what? I was going to use that one as an example, so we might as well go after it. Okay, if they're not going to get involved with homecoming, that's great. You got one home game after that. Happens to be late in the season.
Yeah.
Happens to be against Arkansas State. My specific question to you is, could they move that game off of Saturday if they wanted to?
No, that's one thing they cannot do.
Okay.
You have to tell us, and I think it's the January 30th deadline, if I'm not mistaken, if you want the game not on Saturday, but you have control of the time on Saturday.
Well, and you know
can't
what?
Move it off.
And on November the 26th, that may not be a big deal.
Right.
As a matter of fact, if they say 1 o'clock, you might go hug them.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's actually, any of the 3 times on that day would probably be fine.
11, 2:30, and 6 o'clock, are those the times?
11, 2:30, and 6 Central. Yes, that's it. Yes.
Okay. Now, all right, let me ask you 1 or 2 questions about this past Saturday, and then we're going to move on to this Saturday. And once again, I'm going to keep this TV thing in the forefront. Your crowd Saturday was a little over 22,000. Now, in your opinion as the athletic director, how much of that was the time of the kickoff? How much of that was just the fact that it was on terrestrial television and available locally? How much of that was the economy? And how much of that is you've got some folks, and I've talked to some of them, and they've got things aren't moving fast enough, and they're discouraged, and so they don't really. They're saying, okay, I don't know that I can do this anymore. All of those things probably had a little bit to do with that. But do you think the kickoff time was the biggest thing?
I really do. I mean, I've been in this business now a very long time, and there is a significant difference between 11 o'clock in the morning and 6 o'clock in the evening. You are right. Every factor you said probably played a role and probably had some percentage we could identify somehow. But I think by far the biggest was 11 o'clock in the morning. I do believe that.
All right.
I believe we had a 28 to 32,000 crowd that would have been there at 6 o'clock.
You're going to play McNeese State this weekend. It was announced yesterday that Raycom Sports has done the sublease.
Same exact thing, exactly. A different sublease, but subleased from
ESPN3.
Yep.
And so they are going to televise the game. It is going to be shown on the NBC affiliate in Lake Charles, also on the NBC affiliate in Lafayette. It should be noted that Raycom Sports owns KPLC TV in Lake Charles.
That's correct.
It sounds like what happened, and I haven't had a chance to make a phone call to find out, but it sounds like what happened is KPLC, being Raycom, went ahead and made this arrangement, and that maybe the NBC affiliate here contacted them and said, hey, can we get in on this? Can we do the game as well? I think that's what happened. I don't know that for sure, but that's my guess. So here we go again. This time, nobody's messing with the kickoff time because this evidently just got worked out. But one thing we found out is that the 2 announcers that have been slated to work the game are both McNeese State graduates. Coming to Cajun Field, now how the hell does that happen?
Yeah, that was a shocker to both me and my staff yesterday and to the commissioner. And quite honestly, the commissioner called after 5 o'clock yesterday just absolutely livid and had been on the phone most of the afternoon with Raycom and with ESPN, who subleased it, because, again, it happened without his office knowing about it, and just said, really? What perception is that? What optics are out there when this happens? McNeese wouldn't have the opportunity to be on the air if it wasn't because of the Sun Belt Conference contract with ESPN. That's how it got here. So how does that happen? How do we not have any input? And I got to admit, finally this morning, mid-morning, late morning, we got a little bit of a reprieve, and we are going to be able to hire, it looks like, the color commentator. So we're trying to get that in place really right now as we speak.
So am I correct in saying that when the sublease was done with ESPN3, that the agreement was to tell Raycom, you supply the talent?
Well, the whole thing, they supply everything. They do the broadcast, they do the production, they do everything. And so what Raycom did is said, look, we're going to send a production truck down there. They called the station they own and said, you guys just handle the talent. It was, I don't want to say an honest mistake, but it was just that simple. That's who they were dealing with, a station that they owned, and they just said, you guys do that. Well, they did what they know. Those are the people they know in that area.
It's a Lake Charles television station.
And now you're like, wait a minute. And again, you look back at it and you say, whoa, that's not right. So, and I appreciate ESPN understanding that, and I appreciate, again, even Raycom saying, yeah, that's probably not the smartest thing we've ever done. So, but yeah, it was, and it's just happened all so fast. It's like you drop everything, and we got to solve this. We got to get this done.
We have had a conversation, it seems like every time you come in here. I ask you questions about television production, and something that I know that you've wanted to do, something that was a major part of the Alden Report when it came out. And I have asked you about it, and you have said, it's going to cost this much money, and we don't have this much money right now. Let's suppose money wasn't an object and you had that stuff and you were ready to produce your own. Would that have gotten in the way of what happened right here? Or is it because Raycom agreement with ESPN3, it wouldn't have mattered if you could have produced it locally or not?
All right, it gets complicated. We would have been okay this year because they missed a deadline. So we could have picked that up and they couldn't have stepped on our toes at that time.
Okay, so not for this season.
That's right. But in the future, they would be ahead of our own production in the pecking order. That's exactly right. Now, then we're talking just football. Of course, we're trying to do it because we want to produce everything we have. Football, basketball, baseball, softball, soccer, everything. And as you know, up until this point, really, football is the only thing that's been picked up very often. So we still want to do what we have talked about on the show before, but yeah, this year it wouldn't have been a problem. In the future, it might be.
Money gets shifted around all the time. Was there ever a time where you were told or where you believed that the money was there for this production equipment?
No, this is a massive, massive undertaking. It's going to take a lot of money to make this happen.
At one time, I think I asked you, and I threw out $2.5 to $3 million as a cost, and you didn't say no. I don't think you said yes, but you didn't say no. Is it in that ballpark, or is it even more expensive? Yeah, it's a little bit more. It's
a 3 to 3.4 is what we're looking at right now. That's a lot of money, unless you win the lottery, Jay.
Yeah, right. Sometimes I look at adversity and I look at it as opportunity. Could what almost happened here with McNeese guys coming to Lafayette to do a game, and let's be clear, they're not only going to be on Channel 7 and KLAF, they're also the ESPN3 announcers because ESPN is still putting the game on.
That's right.
So as it stands at this particular moment, you still have Butch Alsander and Buford Jordan, two McNeese graduates, coming in to do this national stream, local telecast, I guess is the way to put it. The fact that you've got folks from Lake Charles coming here to do this, is this a way to go to folks and say, guys, it's more and more important now than ever before that we get this TV production equipment in and we get this thing. I mean, is this something you can use to turn into a positive here?
Well, I certainly hope so, because this is a great example. We want to take on our own rights and not let this kind of stuff happen into the future. But again, this is a weird situation. We had a conference call amongst all the athletic directors in the conference today, and the commissioner, partially so I could explain to the other athletic directors, this is a game changer. This contract that we've had for many years with ESPN, okay, it affects us a little bit. We play a few midweek games, the conference, I'm talking we there, and we play a few Thursday night games. Fine, that's good. But then after that, it didn't affect us very much. But now with these two sublease agreements, those two, American Sports Network and Raycom, they're going to want a bunch of Sun Belt games. They're going to want UL games. And for them to have the same rights to move games or change game times, that's a significant change on us. And it could affect our revenue in a negative way. I think this past week, again, I really believe we would have had 8,000 to 10,000 more people. Well, you know what? 8,000 to 10,000 more people paying $25. Now you're starting to talk about some real money. And if that happens once, twice, 3 times a year, holy cow, that's a lot of money. So I think some of the ADs picked up on that pretty quickly today and started challenging the conference office to go look at this, look at that, and come back. And we're going to meet again shortly to try to work this out.
One more question. We're way overdue to take a break, but I want to wrap up the TV part of this before we go any farther. One of the things that the Alden Report talked about was branding and how to get your school referred to the short way, okay? Mm-hmm. They know, they've said, look, market yourself as Louisiana, market yourself as Ragin' Cajuns. It's the one and only. It's all of that, and you guys are in the process of doing that. But I don't know how many people said to me, he said, I turned it off as soon as I saw the UL-L over in the, are you any closer to making a decision on going to ESPN, the NCAA, whatever, and saying, look, for our short thing, this is what we want?
We have actually have a meeting called on that, too. I don't know that we have what this is going to be.
So you don't know. So you don't know what this is yet.
We have a few suggestions that we will take all the way up as high to the president, and then the board's going to have input on it too, because there's some things by board policy that you can do, and some things you cannot.
Yeah,
do.
we understand you can't.
Our problem.
We understand you can't do ULA. We get that.
You can't do UL.
You can't do UL. You can't. No. I get that. Yeah. But that hyphen was forced down everybody's throat by the Sun Belt Conference.
Yes, it was.
And so okay, there are some ideas. They suggested LARC. Does that have a chance? No, I didn't think so. Okay. Just wanted to see if we were any closer on that, because that thing with the dash drives people crazy.
I want to say one thing before we go to break real quick, just to reiterate, because, again, this may affect us in the future. Television has until 12 days out to set a game time. The athletic director of Arkansas State called me right after lunch, right after this conference call, and said, let me get this straight. We are playing Central Arkansas in 2 weeks, and you're telling me on Monday I could get a phone call and tell me my game's going to be at 11 o'clock? I said, Terry Mahajer is his name. I said, Terry, that's exactly what I'm telling you, and it might happen.
Speaking of Terry Mahajer, seems like he's in the news in the world of sports all the time. We're going to get into that and some other things, including, do you get a chance to ask the AD, or do you only get to ask him? It's coming up next. Bird's Eye View continues with Scott Farmer, ESPN1420.com.
It's Jay Walker and Bird's Eye View.
Holy cow!
On Sports Radio, ESPN 1420.
ESPN 1420, ESPN1420.com. Jay Walker, Bird's Eye View. Scott Farmer, Ragin' Cajun Athletic Director. Okay, I want to go back to the last thing I mentioned, then we're going to move on. And it was the brand as far as the little. You said that there are some things that have been kicked around. Do you have a personal favorite? Do you have, you know what, if this were a kingdom and I were the king, within the law?
Right. That's the problem right there. I mean, my favorite would be what everyone wants, would be UL, but we can't do that, so we can't even talk about it right now. There may be one out there that's got more positives than negatives, but none of them are great. UL would be the great one, and it's just something we can't do.
What's your favorite? Do you have one?
No, I'll let you know if I can get it passed first.
Okay, all right. Okay, I understand. Because if you say this is what I want and it doesn't happen, then that's not a good thing. Okay, you mentioned Terry Mahajer. Terry's an interesting guy. Never met him, but he, like you, does regular stuff. Terry is a little bit different because he doesn't pull a lot of punches.
No, if he thinks it, he says it.
You hear about some people sometimes, and you say, "Okay, that that dude needs a filter." Well, I don't know if he needs one, but he doesn't have one. He says what he thinks. He said recently. Of course, I think everybody knows that Arkansas State sent in their paperwork to be considered for the Big 12 Conference. And, of course, it didn't get very far, but at least it got them some publicity because they did that. But he said recently two things, and I'd like to get your opinion on both of them as it pertains to UL.
Okay.
First one was I have no interest in moving this program to Conference USA. They're all used to be Sun Belt members. Been there, done that, don't care. When I had you in last, you stated that the immediate goal for this school was to try to position themselves to become a member of the American Athletic Conference. Do you share what he said about Conference USA and basically that, hey, we're Arkansas State, we're not interested?
Well, I'll tell you what I do share. I know that Conference USA is not the conference it was 10 years ago, 8 years ago, 6 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago. It's just it's totally a different league, and it doesn't have the basketball it used to have. It doesn't have the football that it used to have. It doesn't have the television network it used to have. It doesn't have the revenue sharing that it used to have. It is a totally, totally different conference.
The other thing that he said was maybe it's time, and this was in talking about Big 12 expansion and what could happen now. He said maybe it's time for Conference USA and the Sun Belt Conference to finally get together and come up with two geographically aligned conferences. Would you be up for that?
Oh, look, we have talked about this, Dr. Savoy and I, for several years. And at one point in time, we had a third conference you could throw in there, too, and throw the American in there and pull out three geographically aligned conferences.
In fact, that might have been what he said,
Sure.
was to include the American also.
This is something, in fact, that Dr. Savoy challenged the commissioner on. Have conversations with your counterparts. We're not trying to kill any league here. There would still be 3 leagues or 2 leagues, whoever participates, but come out of it with a list of geographical schools. They're all fairly like schools anyway, meaning athletically and academically anyway. So now you're just going to come out with some bus leagues in there, and it just makes more sense, and the rivalries would intensify, and perhaps you'd get better television networks wanting you if you have that type of situation. So that is something that, yes, we have talked about, and it has been talked about at the conference level for several years now.
I was thinking about this morning. Because I think that New Mexico State probably would like to be, considered or included in that. And so I said, okay, you got New Mexico State and UTEP.
Right there next to each other.
Help me if I forget somebody. Texas San Antonio and Texas State.
Right.
You have Rice. For the time being, I'm going to leave out Houston just in case they wind up someplace else. Rice, SMU, North Texas, Tulsa, Arkansas State, Louisiana Tech, Louisiana, and I'm going to say for the 12th school, Southern Mississippi. With all due respects to our counterparts at the University of Louisiana at Monroe, they need to make a decision whether they're going to make a commitment to 1A athletics, and if not, they need to do something else. So I'm leaving them out of the league. Does that league work for you?
That's a pretty darn good league. I would vote for that league in a heartbeat. And then, again, you could keep going on the other side and pick up with South Al and Troy and UAB and Middleton and Western Kentucky and App and Georgia State and Georgia Southern.
Florida schools.
The Florida schools, Coastal. You'd have a great league over there also. So that it makes a whole lot of sense. And again, I would love to see that at least get everybody in the room. Let's talk about it.
I am one of those people that when Craig Thompson of the Mountain West Conference says something, I take it with a grain of salt, because I think that Craig, and I've known him for many, many years. I think he's a good guy. I think he's been a good commissioner. But he has tried very, very hard when the Power Five get talked about to try to get the Mountain West into that conversation as well. With the Big West, with the Big 12 and their expansion thing maybe starting to quiet down a little bit, now he's standing up saying, you know what? We're considering expansion. And when I read it, I said, no, Craig, you're really not. This is just one of those things where you're trying to get a little attention, and I can appreciate it. Suppose he's serious. Is the Mountain West anything that this university might be interested in if the Mountain West showed an interest?
Well, again, I think it would be like any conference. I answered it last time we were in here. That is something we would have to sit down and put the numbers down and make sure it works for us. If it is, absolutely, it was something we would be seriously and look at. Sure, it would be.
If you were to sit down like now and start putting some numbers together, and you saw that it would work in the Mountain West, would you be willing? Would you consider actively seeking that?
Well, yeah, I would. Sure, we would.
Okay.
I mean, that doesn't mean we would publicly seek it.
I
asked me actively.
Right.
Yes.
But when you see schools that make it very obvious what they want to do, in the case of Arkansas State with the Big 12, or everybody else with the Big 12, or the posturing that Louisiana Tech publicly did to get into Conference USA, you do understand there are a lot of folks that kind of wish we do that too.
I absolutely understand that, but our position hasn't changed. You don't want to upset the conference you're in. The conference you're in controls your football schedule, controls all your schedules.
How'd Carl feel about Arkansas State applying for the Big 12?
I don't know that that was taken overly serious, to be perfectly honest with you, but I do know there's been some overtures to other leagues, and I do have seen emails that he has sent and that he's not very happy about it. And I just, why put your institution publicly, put your institution up like that when it doesn't have to be? I mean, again, you're talking about officials, schedules. There's a lot of things that the conference office controls, and I just don't think it's worth putting our athletes at risk when you don't have to put them at risk, is my point.
You started a new thing about, pretty close to a month ago called Ask the AD, where people can go online to the website, RagingCajuns.com, click it on, here's your name, here's this, and here's your question. Is this something that you plan to address all at once? Because I went there the other day. I was looking to see if there were any questions and answers. I didn't see any. So is that something you're going to do like once a month and do the whole thing at once?
Yeah, that's exactly what we're going to do. We actually probably put it out a week to 10 days too early because we plan on addressing it the first of every month. Let's just say, I don't want to necessarily say the first day, but right at the first of every month. So I think we've got 5 or 6 questions right now that multiple people have asked. So we will do our best to address those. And so October 1st, we'll do our best to address those. And if we get them all, we will. If not, we'll carry them over to the next month, excuse me. So, that's something that kind of like just being on this show. We want to do something on a monthly basis that just helps get some information out to our fans and helps answer some questions they may have.
This let me rewind for just a minute. How many emails a week do you personally get? sfarmer@louisiana.edu. How many do you get from fans, season ticket holders, boosters, just people asking questions, complaining, praising the efforts of the athletic department?
Yeah, I don't know how to answer that, Jay. I probably get 200 emails a day, so that's 1,000 a week roughly.
Wow.
But those are business emails too, and all that. I mean, after this past game, I might have had a total of 40 or 50 that had some type of a concern, whether it was our offense or our defense, or the heat, or the time, or I didn't have enough ice in my Coke, or whatever. We didn't give out sunscreen was one. I mean, I got a few that are in there, and you know what? The ones that are respectful, that come across with some genuine interest in all. Look, we try to answer every single one of them. We really do. Now, some of them, they don't get answered.
We talk all the time about raising money. The last time you were here, we talked about how the loan for Teague Moore Field, and you need to raise X number of dollars. Have you gotten in the past month? Have you seen an increase in the amount of money that you've been able to put? And I know you talk to Jim Harris all the time, and it's probably his department that's doing most of that. as far as, people stepping up and you being able to say, okay, now we were at, I think, $8.2 million in pledges or money collected, and, now it's going up a little bit. Have you seen any movement since we have started to see construction out of the ballpark?
And Jay, that's a great question. And I'm embarrassed to tell you I don't know the answer to it because we just have spent all our time literally in the last 2 to 3 weeks on this annual fund and getting tickets out. Everything we talked about early, Jim has still continued to push for that, the capital campaign part of baseball. So that's something either we need to get him on the air and let him answer, or I'll bring the answer to the numbers next time I'm on with you. But I really don't have a feel for that. Again, our annual fund numbers the last 2 weeks were phenomenal. I'm talking several 100,000. So I was very pleased with that.
Have you talked with the folks, and again, this may come back to you've been getting ready for a football game, but with the weather issues that we had in the second week of August, have you heard from anyone involved with baseball or the contractor that has caused an X number of days delay in what they were planning to have done by this time?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll simplify the answer to start with and then give you a little bit more detail one. We lost about a week, okay, right at a solid week. But I want everybody to know that two things. Number one, every Friday we get what is affectionately called the Friday report, which is the contractor giving us a report of what happened the previous week, what to look forward to the next week, any outstanding issues that haven't been solved so they can order whatever they need to order, whatever the case may be. We literally get that every Friday, and it has a calendar, so we can look that up. I didn't bring it with me, but we could look it up to see where they stand. And then the other thing, we meet face-to-face every 2 weeks. The architects get in the room, the contractors in the room, UL's in the room, myself, Coach. We're in there, again, just trying to stay on top of the information that we need to give to our architect and our contractors. So they're trying to over-communicate on this project because it's such a fast timeline. As an example, we only did that every month when we were building the Student Athlete Performance Center. Timeline wasn't as crunched as this timeline is right here. So we actually have a meeting tomorrow morning.
All right. You said that it would probably be around November before, you would say, okay, the target date for occupation is, the target date for completion is, and
a more realistic one anyway. Yes,
right. And so I just want you to know, when you come in here at the beginning of November, I'm going to ask you that question. It's probably going to be the first question I ask you.
And I meant the end of November, Jay. You didn't know that.
Yeah. We've got a couple of other things we wanted to go through with Scott before we cut him loose this afternoon. Don't forget the Sports Gap comes your way just after 4 o'clock. We'll play Fill in the Blank today, and we'll do more with Ragin Cajun Athletic Director Scott Farmer when we return after this. ESPN 1420 and .com.
Jay Walker and Bird's Eye View.
Did my life get any better?
On Sports Radio ESPN 1420.
ESPN 1420 and ESPN1420.com. Scott Farmer, Ragin Cajun Athletic Director, our guest. We talked about expansion a little bit earlier as it pertained to the Mountain West. We really haven't talked about the Big 12 today. And I know that as the athletic director, you talk to athletic directors who talk to athletic directors who talk to athletic directors. What's your gut about what the Big 12 is going to do? I have an opinion. I want to hear yours. What do you think they're going to do?
That's probably the second most asked question I get. So I would guess at this point in time, if you made me give you some type of an answer, that it would probably be they're going to expand by 2.
Okay.
Not 4, but 2.
That does not coincide with my opinion. I'm just letting you know. Because I don't think they're going to do anything.
That would not be a surprise to me at all. I mean, I remember, in fact, I saw my notes from a meeting I went to in January. I just saw them last weekend when I was in my office of that they don't want to expand, but they're tired of all the questions that are surrounding them. But they did not, at that meeting, the word was they did not want to expand. That was just January. So, golly, 9 months ago. So it wouldn't surprise me, but something tells me that they might go by 2.
They're
Revenue driven, by the way.
Oh, sure.
Revenue driven.
Isn't everything?
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't everything revenue driven now? Okay. I brought up the Alden report a couple of times. And there are some things that you and I agree are critical. And we know what they are because we've talked about them every time. And all of them have to do with being able to have money to do it. So I'm tired of beating that horse. Have there been any other conversations with that group since the report was first released? That you know of?
With Mike Alden?
Yeah.
No.
Do you think that there are any plans to have any other?
We definitely want to bring back one of the consultants that Mike had brought on board, Lee Burke Media. We would definitely want to talk to them and let them help us go through the multimedia rights deal. Yes. I mean, I'm not saying it's a done deal yet, but we would like to do that. He's one of the leading experts in the whole country on that, and he's got the contacts to help us, so let's take advantage of it.
Can you do anything about multimedia rights before you get the television production equipment thing done?
You can, but you're not gonna make the impact that you would have with the television piece. In other words, I mean, we could sell our multimedia rights right now, and the multimedia right might only be advertising and corporate sponsorships. I mean, we have that under our control right now. We could do that. But you're not going to get the bang for your buck because you don't have then radio, you don't have television. And it's when you can package all that together that you start talking about some major dollars.
I know that, once again, we'll go back to Arkansas State. They started, I think, toward the end of last year doing their television, because I know when we went up there for baseball, they were producing for ESPN3 their baseball games, and their radio guy was doing the TV, and they got somebody else to do the radio. And I know that they were able to parlay that and the rest of it into a deal with Learfield.
Yep.
But I kind of got the impression that no use to do it until you have the TV thing done.
Again, you'll get some money, but you're not going to make nearly the bang for your buck as if you put it all together. And again, so if a person can go and sit down with an executive of company ABC and offer them TV commercials and radio commercials and signage and venue, sponsorship of a game, that interests people. Not just, hey, can I have a sign out at the baseball park or the softball park? That not a lot of bang for your buck there.
You've got McNeese State coming in on Saturday, and
really,
yeah, you were you here the last time the teams played? This was right about the time, or maybe a couple of weeks before. It was my
second home game, Jay. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was agony. The first home game that year was Ohio U. The first game of the year was South Carolina. Oh yeah, so it was game 3. We did South Carolina, then we did Ohio U, who beat us in the fourth quarter. And then McNeese came. You're looking it up. You don't trust me, do you, Jim?
No, because I remember you got here in 2007, but I didn't remember the exact date.
It was agony. I'm telling you, I hated it.
Well, here's hoping you don't hate it.
Yeah, amen. You know, we had an unbelievable crowd that day. It was the second best in the school's history at that time.
At that time, yeah.
Only behind the A&M game. And we just didn't get it done. And, in fact, I saw Michael Desormeaux today, and he says it was the lowest point of his career at UL.
Well, my guess is he's going to get to do the pregame speech in the locker room. Scott Farmer, Ragin Cajun Athletic Director, appreciate you coming by and visiting with us, and we'll do it again at the beginning of October.
Do it next month. All right. Thanks, Jay.
Stick around. We got Sports Center next, then the Sports Gap. Scott Prather joins me on ESPN 1420 and .com.